The cold wind whipped through the naval base that morning. The sirens of the dockyard wailed faintly in the distance as officers gathered for inspection. The sound of boots striking concrete echoed through the steel corridors where the Navy's top-ranking officials were preparing for a classified mission. It was a day unlike any other for Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hill, a woman whose name carried both mystery and defiance. Her uniform was spotless, her gaze sharp, yet there was a silence in her eyes that told a story no one dared to ask about. She had been in the Navy for 9 years and no one truly knew where she came from. The morning briefing had just begun when Admiral Ross entered the room. Every officer stood at attention. The air turned heavy with authority. The Admiral's reputation was legendary. He was known for being fearless, disciplined, and cold as the ocean in winter. But that morning something unexpected was about to unfold. Sarah stood in the second row, her back straight, her jaw set, when suddenly 2 military police officers entered the hall, whispering to the captain. Moments later, the captain turned to Sarah with an unreadable expression. "Lieutenant Commander Hill, you're under arrest." The words struck like thunder across the silent room. Before she could even react, her wrists were pulled behind her and the cold steel of handcuffs clicked shut. Confusion rippled through the officers as whispers filled the air. What could Sarah possibly have done? The Admiral raised an eyebrow, watching her being restrained. He had seen many arrests in his career, but something about this didn't sit right. Sarah didn't resist. Her eyes looked straight ahead, calm but unflinching, as though she knew something the rest didn't. The MPs began escorting her out, but before she crossed the threshold of the briefing room, the Admiral's deep voice rumbled across the hall. "Wait." The room froze. The Admiral rose slowly, his eyes narrowing at the faint mark on Sarah's wrist where her sleeve had rolled back, a tattoo barely visible beneath the cuff. He took a step forward. "What's that, soldier?" he asked. His tone was low, almost dangerous. One of the MPs scoffed. "Just a mark, sir." "She's..." The Admiral cut him off sharply. "Let me see it." Sarah hesitated, then turned her wrist slightly, revealing the full design. It wasn't an ordinary tattoo. It was a small black insignia shaped like a falcon clutching a dagger. The Admiral's eyes widened. For the first time in years he had seen that mark once, decades ago, in a file so classified even generals weren't cleared to view it. The tattoo belonged to the Ghost Falcon Unit, a covert strike team that operated under direct orders from the Department of Naval Intelligence, a team that officially didn't exist, a team that vanished 5 years ago after a mission in the Pacific went dark. The Admiral stared at Sarah in disbelief. The Ghost Falcons were more myth than memory. Their operations were buried in silence, but he knew that symbol. No one wore it unless they had earned it through missions that defied death. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Let her go." Those words cut through the confusion. The MPs froze. "Sir, we have orders. She's..." "I said let her go now." His voice thundered. The handcuffs came off instantly. Sarah rubbed her wrists but said nothing. Her expression didn't change. The Admiral looked straight into her eyes. "Lieutenant Commander Hill, I need to know where you got that tattoo." Her answer was calm, steady. "Sir, I didn't get it. I earned it." A stunned silence filled the room. The Admiral dismissed everyone except Sarah and walked to the window, staring out at the sea. "You're supposed to be dead," he said quietly. "The Ghost Falcon team went down over the Mariana Trench." She nodded softly. "We were shot down. Only 2 of us made it out alive. We were ordered to disappear and protect what was left of the mission data." The Admiral turned to face her. "That mission was about a stolen submarine prototype, wasn't it? Project Leviathan." Sarah nodded again. "The design was leaked to a foreign power. They wanted to use it to build an underwater nuclear carrier. We stopped them, but at a cost." She paused, her voice heavy. "The man who betrayed us was one of our own." The Admiral's eyes darkened. The past he had tried to bury was back from the dead. He motioned her to follow. They walked down the hall past the portraits of decorated admirals and war heroes until they reached a sealed briefing chamber. He keyed in his private access code and the door slid open. Inside was a large digital screen showing live satellite footage of the Pacific Ocean. The Admiral pointed at the screen. Do you see that a massive signal distortion was pulsing near the same coordinates where the Ghost Falcons disappeared? Sarah stepped closer. That's it, she said. That's where we hid the prototype data, inside the wreckage of the old carrier. They're trying to recover it again. The Admiral clenched his jaw. How did they find it? Sarah answered simply, because someone inside helped them again. By nightfall the base was under lockdown. Every operative was questioned, every ship inspected. The intelligence team worked non-stop tracing encrypted transmissions. They found a signal bouncing between naval communication towers encrypted with codes that hadn't been used since the Ghost Falcons vanished. The Admiral and Sarah were in the operations room reviewing the intercepted data when suddenly the lights flickered, then went out. The emergency sirens began to wail. An internal breach, said one officer over the radio. Unauthorized access in the command center. The Admiral and Sarah rushed toward the sound of gunfire. Smoke filled the air as masked intruders stormed the facility. They moved with precision, clearly trained military operatives. Sarah grabbed a fallen rifle and took cover behind a metal barricade, returning fire with deadly accuracy. The Admiral shouted to his guards, secure the data vault. Sarah moved like lightning, her instincts sharp, her movements surgical. Each shot she fired hit its mark. When the smoke cleared, one of the intruders lay wounded on the ground. Sarah ripped off his mask, revealing the face of a man she once knew. Commander Blake, former Ghost Falcon operative. Her voice trembled. Blake, why? He smirked, bleeding from his shoulder. Because they offered what the Navy never did: freedom, power, money. The Admiral knelt beside him. Where's the rest of your team? Blake coughed. They're already underwater retrieving the prototype. You can't stop them. Sarah looked at the Admiral, grim determination in her eyes. Then we're going after them. Within an hour they were airborne in a Black Hawk helicopter heading toward the stormy Pacific night. Lightning crackled over the waves as the chopper descended toward the coordinates. Sarah suited up in her old Ghost Falcon gear, a black wetsuit with the same insignia glowing faintly on her shoulder. The Admiral stood beside her, ready to command from the surface. You sure about this? he asked. She nodded. This time we finish it. They dove into the dark waters, the cold cutting through like glass. The sonar beacons flashed around them, illuminating the wreck of the old carrier resting on the ocean floor. Sarah and her team of divers moved stealthily as the enemy's submersible lights approached. The battle beneath the sea began, silent, deadly, precise. Explosions of light burst underwater as torpedoes streaked through the murky depths. Sarah maneuvered through the wreckage, planting charges on the enemy sub's hull. She swam fast, her breath steady, her heartbeat echoing through her mask. The enemy divers spotted her, but she moved like a shadow, striking before they could react. Suddenly she felt a sharp pain, a bullet grazing her shoulder. She turned to see another diver approaching with a harpoon gun. It was Blake, somehow still alive. Sarah dodged the shot and slammed into him. Wrestling in the weightless darkness, the two spun violently until she tore off his oxygen tank, sending him sinking into the abyss. The Admiral's voice came through the comms. Sarah, do you copy? Detonation in 30 seconds. She swam upward as the wreckage below erupted in a massive explosion, lighting up the entire ocean. The surface broke open as she emerged, gasping for air. The Admiral pulled her aboard the rescue boat as waves crashed around them. The fire of the explosion glowed on the horizon. The Admiral looked at her and said softly, you just saved the Navy, Lieutenant Commander. She looked at him with tired eyes. No, sir, I saved the Ghost Falcons. Weeks later, Sarah stood alone on the deck of the carrier, staring out at the endless sea. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the waves. The Admiral walked up beside her. You could have left, he said quietly. She smiled faintly. I belong here, sir. The sea still remembers us. He nodded slowly. Then, welcome back, Commander Hill. As the ship sailed toward the dawn, her hand brushed over the tattoo on her wrist. The mark that once brought her shame now stood as proof of loyalty, sacrifice, and honor, a reminder that heroes don't always wear medals. Sometimes they wear scars inked by history itself. And as the waves swallowed the sun, the legend of the woman who once was handcuffed only to be freed by the Admiral's command lived on, whispered in the halls of every naval base as a symbol of courage that never drowned.